She moved my grandmother's quilt off the sofa, a family heirloom. When I asked where it was, Monique laughed. "Oh, that old rag, I put it in the garage. It was ruining the aesthetic." In the house, I drained my savings to help him buy the down payment for. "Hey there. Great to have you with me today. I'm curious, where are you joining from? Write your city in the comments and let's begin our story." The Sunday morning sun always hit the window of my little sweet Auburn apartment just right, splitting the light through the crystal hummingbird my Alfred gave me for my 60th birthday. It threw tiny rainbows across the walls, dancing over the framed photos of my late husband, James, and a grinning, gap-toothed Alfred on his first day of school. That light was a blessing, a quiet promise that some things at least were constant. I was pulling my best purple dress over my head, the one with the good collar reserved for the Lord's Day, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It wasn't the gentle chime of a text from my prayer group. It was a harsh, insistent vibration. I picked it up, squinting at the screen. It was from my nephew, Marcus, the one who'd made the family proud by becoming a lawyer. His message was 3 short lines, and each one landed like a punch to the gut. "Auntie Kendall, call me ASAP, urgent." "Don't text, call." It's about Monique. My breath caught in my throat. Monique, my son's wife of 6 months. The woman with the smile as wide and bright as the Peachtree Center, and eyes that never seemed to smile with it. Alfred was so happy, so taken with her. He said she lit up his world. I tried to see that light. Lord knows, I tried. But all I ever felt was a chill. My fingers, suddenly clumsy, fumbled to dial his number. The rainbows on the wall seemed to mock me. "Marcus?" My voice came out a whisper. "Auntie Kendall, are you sitting down?" I'm standing in my purple dress, about to praise the Lord. What is this? There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling on his end. It was the sound of bad news getting its shoes on. "I did that background check you asked for," he said, his lawyer voice barely hiding the worried nephew underneath. "The informal one. You had a feeling, you said." "And?" My heart was a cold, heavy stone in my chest. "And your feeling was right," he said. "Monique Dubois, or whatever her name is this week, does not have a dental hygienist license in the state of Georgia, or Florida, or Alabama. The school she listed on her resume? They've never heard of her. But the name, it did pop up in connection with a few small claims court cases in Mobile. Financial disputes, an old landlord, a car dealership, all settled out of court, all very messy." I sank onto the edge of my bed, the springs groaning in protest. The purple dress felt like a costume for a play I was no longer in. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of the television. 68 years old, a widow, a retired librarian who spent 40 years surrounded by stories. I knew a thing or two about villains and heroes, about good intentions and deceitful plots. Today, it seemed, I was living in one of those stories. And this fight wasn't just about a few messy court cases or a fake degree. It was about Alfred, my only child, my world. I'd sold our big family home after James passed. It was too big, too full of ghosts. This little one-bedroom apartment nestled in the heart of our history was enough for me. It was paid for. It was mine. I'd used the rest of the money to make sure Alfred got the best start, a down payment on his own place, a nest egg. I'd given them a generous check for the wedding, too, a check that was supposed to build a future, not fund a fraud. I was still going to dinner at Alfred's tonight. I had to, but it wasn't a family dinner anymore. It was a mission. I stood up, straightened the collar on my dress, and looked at that woman in the reflection again. Her eyes were tired, but they weren't afraid. They were the eyes of a mother. And a mother's love is a powerful and terrible thing when you threaten her child. My old Buick, a 1999 LeSabre James kept in perfect condition, hummed along the highway, carrying me out of the city and into the suburbs, out to Decatur. The farther I drove from the familiar streets of sweet Auburn, the more the world seemed to lose its color. The vibrant murals gave way to beige strip malls, the old brick apartment buildings replaced by rows of identical houses with perfectly manicured lawns. Alfred's new house was one of them, a big 2-story box of gray siding that smelled more like new paint than a home. When I stepped inside, the chill I always felt around Monique had taken over the whole house. It was decorated like a page from a magazine, all white and gray and chrome. Impersonal. Cold. My eyes immediately went to the wall in the living room above the fireplace. The space was empty. "Where's your Morehouse pennant, baby?" I asked, running a hand over the smooth, cold plaster. That crimson pennant had hung in his room since he was 10 years old. His dream, his accomplishment. It had been the first thing he'd hung up in this house. Alfred came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, Monique thought it didn't really match the aesthetic, Mom. We put it in the garage." The aesthetic. I nodded slowly, my gaze drifting to the sofa. Another ghost, the patchwork quilt my grandmother had stitched together from scraps of our family's life, my baby blanket, my father's old work shirt, a piece of my wedding dress, was gone. In its place were a half-dozen gray pillows, chopped and arranged just so. That quilt was meant to be passed down to his children. It was our history, and it was in the garage, with his dreams. Alfred saw where I was looking. "Mom, don't start." "I haven't said a word," I said softly. Monique glided into the room then, a vision in white linen pants and a silk top. "Mama Kendall, you look so lovely. That color is just divine on you." She kissed the air next to my cheek. Her perfume was expensive and sharp. "Dinner will be ready in a few. Alfred, honey, can you come help me with the wine?" It was the opening I needed. The second she disappeared back into the kitchen, I took Alfred by the arm and pulled him into his office. It was the only room that still felt like him, with his books and his messy desk. "What's wrong, Mom? You've had a look on your face since you walked in." I closed the door. "Son, we need to talk. It's about your wife." He stiffened, pulling his arm away. "I'm not doing this. Whatever it is, just stop. You've never given her a fair chance." "This isn't about chances, Alfred. This is about facts. Marcus did some digging." I told him everything, the fake license, the money troubles in Alabama. I kept my voice low and steady, laying out the words like bricks. He shook his head, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "People make mistakes. She's had a hard life. She told me, you're twisting it." "Am I?" I asked. "Am I twisting the fact that your Morehouse pennant is in the garage?" "That's different," he shot back, his voice rising. "That's just stuff." "It's not just stuff, and you know it. That quilt is your great-grandmother's hands, your father's memory. It's us, and it's gone." The argument hung in the air, unresolved, when Monique called us for dinner. We sat at a glass table big enough for 8, just the 3 of us. She'd made shrimp and grits, a dish she knew was my favorite, a peace offering, or a tactic. I waited until we were halfway through the meal. I took a slow sip of water, placed the glass down deliberately, and looked her in the eye. "Monique, honey," I began, my voice as sweet as the tea I wished I was drinking. "I was just going over my finances the other day, and I was thinking about that wedding check I gave you both. I was so happy to help you get started. Did you end up using it for the caterer? Or was that for the honeymoon?" Her fork clattered against her plate. The bright smile froze, then cracked. Alfred shot me a look that pleaded, "Don't," but it was too late. The trap was sprung. Monique's eyes filled with tears. Her lower lip trembled. It was a masterful performance. I can't believe this," she stammered, her voice thick with hurt. "You think I'm, what, stealing from you? After everything I do for Alfred? I work so hard to make a good home for him." She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. "I'm sorry," she sobbed, looking at Alfred. I need some air. Your mother, she just has it out for me." She fled the room. A moment later, we heard the front door open and close. Alfred stared at her untouched plate, his face a mask of anger and confusion. And there, on the empty chair beside him, lay her iPhone. Screen up. It hadn't been an accident. It was a dare. The silence in that cold, gray room was deafening. The only sound was the hum of the stainless steel refrigerator from the kitchen. Alfred wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the phone sitting on the chair, a sleek black rectangle of secrets. "She went for a drive," he said finally, his voice flat, "to cool off." "Or to give us an opportunity," I replied, my voice quiet but firm. "Alfred, look at the phone." "I'm not going through my wife's phone, Mom. That's insane. It's a violation of her privacy." "Is it more of a violation than her lying about her entire life? More of a violation than her hiding our family history in the garage like it's trash?" I stood up and walked over to the chair. I didn't touch the phone. I just looked at him. "Your father, God rest his soul, always said you can't fight a shadow. You need to turn on the light. That phone is the light switch. You can choose to stay in the dark or you can choose to see what's really there." He wrestled with it. I could see the war in his eyes, the love he felt for this woman fighting against the cold, hard knot of doubt I had planted in his gut. For a long minute, I thought I had lost. I thought he would choose the comfortable lie. Then, with a deep sigh of resignation, he reached out and picked it up. "What's the password?" I asked. He flinched. "Our wedding date." He typed in the numbers, his thumb hovering over the last digit before pressing it. The screen unlocked. My heart pounded against my ribs. "Check her messages first," I whispered. He swiped it open. The top of the list was a string of texts with a contact named Only Jay. The most recent ones were from that afternoon. My blood ran cold as Alfred read them aloud, his voice barely a whisper. "The old woman suspects something. She's coming for dinner. Gotta be careful." How much longer do I have to play him? This suburban act is killing me. "Just get the papers filed. I need to speed up the green card plan. He's getting sentimental." Alfred swayed slightly, putting a hand on the table to steady himself. "Green card?" "Keep reading," I urged, my own voice tight. He scrolled up, his breath catching. There were older messages, more explicit, discussions of assets, of his income. One message from Jay read, "Did you get access to the 401k portal yet?" Monique's reply, "Working on it. He's smarter than the last one." The last one. Alfred made a choked sound and dropped into the chair. He swiped out of the messages and went to the photo gallery, as if searching for proof that this was all a mistake. What we found was worse. It wasn't pictures of their honeymoon. It was screenshots, dozens of them, screenshots of his bank account, statements, his investment portfolio, his 401k balance, a healthy 6 figures he'd worked his whole life to build. And then, the final nail in the coffin. It was a photo of a document, an application for a new life insurance policy for $500,000. Alfred's name was listed as the insured. The sole beneficiary was Monique. The application was dated 3 weeks ago. Alfred went pale. Not just pale, but a sickly, ashen gray I hadn't seen since his father's funeral. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a horror so profound it stole his voice. The smart, successful man I had raised looked like a lost little boy. I moved to his side, placing a hand on his trembling shoulder. My own anger was a hot, righteous fire, but I pushed it down. He didn't need my anger right now. He needed my strength. "Okay," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Okay, son, breathe. We know what we're dealing with now. We know." My first instinct was to call the police, to dial 911 and bring the whole world crashing down on her. But I stopped myself. This wasn't a job for a random patrol car. This was delicate. This required someone who understood our community, someone who would listen to a 68-year-old woman and her heartbroken son without judgment. I pulled out my own phone. I didn't dial 911. I scrolled through my contacts to a name I hadn't called in years, but one I knew I could trust with my life. Detective Marcus Henderson. Mark to me. He'd grown up 2 streets over. I'd given him cookies after school and helped him with his history homework at the library. He owed me a favor. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mama Kendall. Everything all right?" "No, Mark," I said, looking at my son's shattered face. "Nothing is all right. I need your help." I told him everything quickly and clearly. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a short silence. "Okay," he said, his voice all business now. "Don't do anything. Don't call her. Don't text her. Don't delete a single thing from that phone. Lock the doors. I'm on my way." The sun wasn't even fully up when Detective Henderson's unmarked sedan pulled up to Alfred's house. He looked different than the lanky teenager I remembered. Broader, etched with the kind of weariness that comes from seeing too much of the world's ugly side, but his eyes were still kind when he looked at me. He guided us through the next few hours with a calm authority that soothed Alfred's frayed nerves. He photographed every message, every screenshot on Monique's phone before wiping it clean and leaving it on the kitchen counter, right where she'd left it. A silent statement. By 8 a.m., we were in a quiet corner of a coffee shop not far from Alfred's house, a place that smelled of roasted beans and burnt sugar. My nephew Marcus was already there, a laptop open in front of him and a grim look on his face. He wrapped me in a hug that was all business. The 4 of us, a retired librarian, a heartbroken IT manager, a determined lawyer, and a tired cop, became a council of war. "First things first," Marcus said, tapping on his keyboard. "We lock everything down. Alfred, I need you to log into your bank, your credit cards, your 401k, everything. We change every password, and we add 2-factor authentication. Right now." Henderson slid a napkin across the table. "And you call these numbers: Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. You tell them you're a victim of identity theft and put a freeze on your credit. That means no one, not you, not her, not the Pope, can open a new line of credit in your name without a mountain of verification." Alfred, pale but resolute, got to work. His fingers flew across his phone screen, a grim purpose in every tap. He was dismantling the life he thought he was building, one password at a time. It was a painful, necessary surgery. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Monique. "Baby, I'm so sorry about last night. Your mom just gets to me. Can we talk?" Alfred looked at Henderson, who gave a slight shake of his head. He ignored it. A minute later, another message. "Alfred? Please answer me. I'm in some trouble." Then the real play began. "Honey, I'm scared. Some people from my past, they found me. They say I owe them money. I need $800, baby. Urgent. Or they said they're going to get it from you." "Classic," Henderson muttered, sipping his coffee. "The phantom debt, stage 2 of the scammer's handbook. Create a crisis that only money can solve." Alfred's phone rang. It was an Atlanta number he didn't recognize. Henderson nodded for him to put it on speaker. A chirpy, professional voice filled the air. "Hi, am I speaking with Mr. Alfred Johnson?" "This is he," Alfred said, his voice strained. "This is Brenda from the Atlanta Dental Group, calling on behalf of Monique Dubois. We're just calling to confirm the details of her emergency family leave of absence." My ears perked up. Something was off. "Her what?" Alfred asked. "Her leave of absence," the woman repeated. "She cited a family emergency and said she'd be out for an indefinite period. We just needed a family contact to verify." I leaned forward. "Excuse me," I said, my voice clear and polite. "I'm his mother. I actually called your office last week to try and send Monique some flowers. I was put on hold for a moment. You have a lovely hold music selection, that smooth jazz trio." There was a beat of silence on the other end. Yes, ma'am, our hold music." "That's the thing, though," I continued. a cold certainty washing over me. The music playing when Alfred's phone was ringing just now wasn't jazz. It was some kind of hip-hop beat. Sounded like it was coming from a car radio. The silence on the other end stretched. "And Brenda," I added. "When I called last week, the receptionist's name was Cheryl. She was very helpful. What's your direct extension number, dear, in case I need to call back?" There was a fumbling sound, a muffled curse word, and then the line went dead. Marcus stared at me, his mouth slightly open. Henderson allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Auntie Kendall," Marcus said, "you are something else." "I'm a librarian," I said simply. "I notice details." Henderson pulled out his own phone and tapped a few buttons. "Just as I thought," he said a moment later. "The call came from a burner phone, a prepaid disposable. She's getting sloppy. She's in a panic because the money tap just got turned off." The war had begun, and we had just won the first battle. The panic escalated quickly. Monique's messages to Alfred turned from desperate pleas to angry demands. When he continued to ignore them, she changed tactics. She started texting me. "Mama Kendall, I know you're with him. You've poisoned him against me. This is your fault. You need to fix this. Have him meet me. There are things he doesn't understand." I showed each message to Henderson, who was now our field general. He advised silence. Let her unravel. Her next message was an ultimatum. "I'm done playing games. Tell Alfred to meet me tonight. 11 p.m. behind the old North DeKalb Mall by the access road for I-285. He comes alone, or he'll never see a dime of the money I was holding for us." I didn't have to be a detective to know what that meant. A dark, deserted location, late at night. It was a threat. My blood ran cold, but Henderson's voice, calm and steady over the phone, anchored me. "Absolutely not," he said. "We control the ground, not her. You're going to answer her, and you're going to sound like a reasonable, concerned mother-in-law who just wants to sort this mess out." He dictated the text, and I typed it out, my fingers feeling strange as I wrote the conciliatory words. "Monique, this has gone far enough. Alfred is too upset to talk. I will meet you, but not there. It's not safe. Let's meet somewhere public. Tomorrow, 1 p.m., the parking lot of the Kroger on Memorial Drive. We can talk things over like two civilized adults." It was a gamble. We were betting her need for the money was greater than her desire to control the situation. For a few hours, there was no reply. I sat in Alfred's sterile living room, the silence a buzzing insect in my ear. Then my phone lit up. "Fine. 1 p.m. Don't be late." The next day, I drove my Buick to the Kroger, the Georgia sun beating down on the endless asphalt. I parked in a spot facing the entrance, a wide-open space with plenty of witnesses, just like Henderson told me to. He was 2 rows back in his sedan, and another unmarked car was parked near the pharmacy entrance. I felt like a spy in a movie I never wanted to watch. At 1:05, a silver Nissan Altima with a rental plate pulled into the lot. It circled once, like a shark, before parking a few spaces away from me. Monique was behind the wheel. She was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled down low. She didn't get out. Instead, she waved a hand, a sharp, impatient gesture, beckoning me toward her. She pointed toward the far corner of the parking lot, past the last row of cars, to the spot where the big green dumpsters stood stinking in the heat, a place with no cameras and no sightlines. My heart hammered against my ribs. The old me, the polite Sunday school teacher, would have wanted to avoid a scene, would have probably walked over just to keep the peace. But that woman was gone. I looked at her car, then back at the bustling entrance to the supermarket. I thought about my grandmother's quilt stuffed in a garage. I thought about the life insurance policy. I shook my head, a small, firm gesture, and I stayed right where I was. I did not move. I saw her hands tighten on the steering wheel. Her plan, whatever it was, required me to be in that dark corner. It required me to be obedient, and I was not obeying. Frustration radiated from her, a palpable heat even from 50 feet away. She realized I wasn't going to follow her script. In a flash of pure fury, she lifted her phone, aimed it at me through her windshield, and took a picture. The message was clear. I see you. This isn't over. Then, with a squeal of tires, she threw the Nissan in reverse, whipped it around, and sped out of the parking lot, cutting off a minivan in her haste. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The immediate danger was over. My hands were shaking. I put the Buick in drive, ready to go home to Alfred's. I was checking my rearview mirror to back out when I saw them, flashing blue lights. A police cruiser was pulling into the parking lot, and it was heading directly for me. For a terrifying second, my mind went blank. The police car pulled up right behind my Buick, its lights painting my dashboard in strobing shades of red and blue. A young, serious-looking officer got out and approached my window. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I was a 68-year-old woman in a church dress. I had never been in trouble in my life. "Ma'am, could you please turn off the vehicle and show me your license and registration?" he asked, his voice polite but firm. "Officer, is there a problem?" I asked, my own voice trembling slightly. "We received a call, ma'am. A woman reported that she was being followed, that she felt threatened. She said the person was driving a vehicle matching this description." Before the full weight of her treachery could crash down on me, Henderson's sedan slid quietly into the space beside me. He got out, his badge clipped to his belt, and approached the officer. "It's all right, officer," Henderson said calmly. "This is a protected party in an ongoing investigation. The complainant is our suspect. It's a retaliatory call. I can clear it up for you." The young officer looked from Henderson to me, his confusion obvious. Henderson spoke to him in a low voice for another minute, and the officer finally nodded, the tension leaving his shoulders. He gave me a brief, apologetic look and walked back to his car. The blue lights vanished. Just as my heart rate was returning to normal, my phone buzzed. It was a screenshot from Alfred, a text message Monique had just sent him. "Your mother is insane. She followed me to the grocery store. She's stalking me. I had to call the police. You better get her under control, or I swear I am filing for a restraining order in the morning. She is a danger to me." I looked at Henderson, who was now leaning against my car door. "She's trying to build a narrative," he said, his voice grim. "She's creating a paper trail to paint you as the unstable, harassing mother-in-law. It's what they do. When the con is up, they go on the attack." That evening, the violation hit even closer to home. We were at Alfred's house, the doors locked, the blinds drawn. My phone rang. It was Mrs. Etta Mae Walker, my next-door neighbor in Sweet Auburn for the last 20 years. She was the eyes and ears of our building. "Kendall, you all right, honey? There was a strange woman here looking for you." "What did she look like, Etta Mae?" I asked, a cold dread seeping into my bones. "Couldn't get a good look. Young, thin, had one of them hoodies pulled way down over her face. She was buzzing every apartment, asking if Miss Kendall was home. Said she had a package to deliver. I told her we don't get packages delivered to the door like that. She got angry and left in a hurry." A minute later, my phone buzzed again. It was a blurry photo from Etta Mae's phone, taken through her peephole. A figure in a dark gray hoodie, head down, standing right in front of my apartment door. I showed the photo to Alfred and called Henderson immediately. His response was swift and absolute. "You're not going home, Mama Kendall. Not tonight. You stay with Alfred. I'll have a patrol car do a quiet drive-by of your building every hour. She knows where you live. She just came to your fortress." The word hung in the air. Fortress. My cozy little apartment, my safe haven filled with memories of James and the smell of old books, had been targeted. This woman wasn't just after Alfred's money anymore. She was coming after my peace, after my life. That night, Alfred and I did not just lock the doors. We went to the hardware store and bought a new digital lock for his front door, one with a keypad. We changed the code. And before we went to bed, Alfred installed the new security camera he'd bought months ago but never gotten around to setting up. It was a small black eye mounted above his front door, staring out into the dark. We were officially under siege. The new lock on Alfred's door and the unblinking eye of the security camera brought a fragile sense of security. but we were living in a fortress of our own making. We moved through the house in a state of hypervigilance, starting at every car that slowed down on the street. Sleep was a luxury, coming in short, troubled bursts. Monique had gone quiet for almost 24 hours, a silence that was more menacing than her frantic texts. The quiet ended on Tuesday evening with a final, booming message that landed on my phone. Alfred's was blessedly silent. She knew who was in charge now. "I am giving you one last chance to fix this. Meet me tomorrow at 4 p.m, the Starbucks on Peachtree Street downtown. You come alone, or I disappear, and you will never see a penny of Alfred's money again. And I will make sure every single one of our friends, everyone Alfred works with, knows what a cruel, jealous, and vindictive old woman you really are." It was a declaration of war, wrapped in a victim's plea, blackmail and a character assassination, all in one. I read it aloud to Alfred, whose face hardened into a mask of resolve. I forwarded it to Henderson. His reply came less than a minute later. It was a phone call. "This is it, Mama Kendall," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth, all professional. "This is our chance. She's arrogant. She thinks she can still control you, intimidate you into a payoff. We're not just going to stop her. We're going to take her." The plan he laid out was simple, and it terrified me. I would go to the meeting. I would wear a wire. The small coffee shop on Peachtree would be filled with his people. Plainclothes officers, men and women, sitting at tables, reading newspapers, typing on laptops, looking like anyone else. They would be listening to every word. My job was to get her to state her demand on tape. Extortion. A felony. "You don't have to do this," Alfred said, his eyes filled with worry. "We can just let the money go. It's not worth you putting yourself in danger." "This stopped being about the money a long time ago, son," I told him, my voice firmer than I felt. "This is about right and wrong. It's about our family. She tried to come to my home. She tried to use the law against me. This has to end. My way." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at Alfred's cold glass dining table with a cup of chamomile tea and a piece of paper. The house was finally, truly quiet. I thought about the woman I was going to face tomorrow, a woman who wore my son's love like a costume. I thought about what I needed to remember, what I needed to hold on to in that storm. With a pen from Alfred's desk, I wrote down 3 rules for myself, 3 anchors. I folded the paper and tucked it deep into the purse I would carry tomorrow. 1. Do not try to save her. She is not a victim. She is a predator. 2. Do not raise your voice. Your power is in your calm. 3. Just tell the us truth. It is the one weapon she cannot counter. I looked at the words, my own handwriting neat and clear on the page. In that moment, sitting in the dark of my son's captured house, I felt the fear that had been living in my stomach for days finally begin to recede. It was being replaced by something else, something cold and hard and clear. It was resolve. The Starbucks on Peachtree was a whirlwind of noise and motion, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of ceramic mugs, the low hum of a dozen conversations, all blended into a single anonymous roar. It was the perfect place to hide in plain sight. I felt a small, almost invisible device taped to my skin, the wire running discreetly under the collar of my blouse. It felt heavy, like a medal or a target. I moved through the crowd, my heart a steady, determined drum against my ribs. I ordered a hot tea, my hands surprisingly steady as I paid the cashier. I found the table Henderson had described, a small 2-top near the plate glass window with a clear view of the door. I sat down, took a sip of the scalding tea, and waited. I didn't look for Henderson's team. I knew they were there. A young woman with headphones, deeply focused on her laptop, a businessman in a crisp suit talking quietly into his phone, 2 construction workers taking a coffee break. They were ghosts, invisible protectors. At 4 o'clock to the minute, the door opened and Monique walked in. She had dressed for the role. No designer tracksuits today. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pulled back, and very little makeup. On her face was a carefully constructed mask of profound sorrow and exhaustion. She looked like a grieving widow, a woman wronged by the world. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me. She took a deep, theatrical breath and walked to my table. "Thank you for coming, Mama Kendall," she said, her voice a fragile whisper as she sat down. She didn't order anything. Theatrics. She launched directly into her final performance, a heartbreaking story about a family debt in her hometown, about dangerous people who had been threatening her, people she was trying to protect Alfred from. The tears welled in her eyes on cue. It was a good story, well rehearsed. A year ago, I might have even believed it. I let her talk. I listened patiently, sipping my tea, letting the warmth of the mug seep into my hands. I remembered my rules. Do not try to save her. Do not raise your voice. Just tell the truth. When she finally paused, dabbing at her dry eyes with a napkin, I set my cup down gently. I looked directly into her eyes, past the fake sadness, and into the cold, calculating mind behind them. "Monique," I said, my voice even and calm, "we both know you don't work at any dental clinic." The mask didn't just crack, it shattered. The manufactured sadness in her eyes vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, reptilian hatred. The soft, wounded whisper was gone. When she spoke again, her voice was a low, venomous hiss that barely carried over the noise of the cafe. "Fine," she hissed. "Fine. Then listen to me, you old witch. Alfred owes me. I gave him the best months of my life. I made him happy. I made him a man people respected. He promised me a life, a good life. You and your penny-pinching ways have ruined everything." "What specifically do you need from me to go away?" I asked, keeping my voice level, keeping to the script Henderson had given me. She leaned forward, her scent of expensive perfume suddenly cloying. "You're going to give me $1,500. Cash. Right now. You're going to buy my bus ticket out of this miserable city, and you're going to pay for my silence. That's the price for me to disappear from your lives and never come back. It's a bargain, considering all the pain and suffering I've been through." My hand went to the purse sitting on my lap. Inside, past my wallet and the folded piece of paper with my 3 rules, was a plain white envelope. Henderson had given it to me that morning. It was thick with marked bills, the bait. I pulled it out slowly, my movements deliberate. I did not want to show fear or anger. I was a librarian conducting a transaction. I placed the envelope on the table between us, my fingers resting on it for a moment. "This is a lot of money, Monique," I said, my voice clear, making sure the tiny microphone could hear every word. "I need to understand what I am paying for. Tell me again, clearly, what this money is for." Her eyes were glued to the envelope, a flicker of greedy triumph in them. She had won. The foolish old woman was caving. She snatched the envelope from under my fingers. "It's for the agreement," she said impatiently, her voice rising slightly. "It's my payment for staying away from you and your son for good, for my silence. Now, are we done?" That was the signal. Across the coffee shop, the young woman with the headphones closed her laptop. The businessman ended his phone call. Their movements were small, economical, but to me they were as loud as a thunderclap. A shadow fell over our table. "Monique, I think it's time we had a talk." The voice was calm, polite, and utterly final. It was Detective Henderson. He was standing beside our table, looking down at her not with anger, but with a kind of professional pity. Monique's head snapped up. Her face, which had been a mask of triumph a second before, crumpled into confusion, then outrage. "Who are you? Get away from us. This is a private conversation," she shrieked, clutching the envelope to her chest. "This woman just gave me a gift. It's my money." "Is that right?" Henderson said, his voice never changing its placid tone. "Because the serial numbers on those bills might tell a different story. and the recording of you demanding them as payment for your silence will probably be of great interest to a judge." 2 other people were now standing behind her chair, the construction worker and the woman who had been reading a book by the counter. They weren't construction workers or book lovers. They were cops. Monique's face turned ashen. She looked from Henderson to the officers to me. In my eyes, she didn't find the fear she expected. She found nothing, just the quiet closing of a book. "You," she whispered, the single word dripping with a venom that was no longer hidden. The 2 plainclothes officers were polite but firm. They each took one of her arms and gently, irresistibly, lifted her from her chair. She didn't fight. The performance was over. There was no audience left to fool. They walked her through the crowded Starbucks, a small, quiet procession that few people even noticed. In a city like Atlanta, a woman being escorted out of a coffee shop by 2 men was just another Tuesday afternoon. Detective Henderson gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. We all believed the performance in the coffee shop was the final act. It wasn't. Henderson had warned us that cornered animals are the most dangerous. Monique, out on bail within 24 hours, had one last desperate scene to play. It happened the next evening. The sun had just set, painting the Decatur sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. Alfred and I were in the kitchen, a quiet tension still humming between us, when the new security camera buzzed Alfred's phone. A car, a dark sedan we didn't recognize, had pulled into his driveway. A woman in a severe-looking business suit got out, carrying a clipboard. She walked up to the door and rang the bell. Alfred and I looked at each other. Henderson's instructions had been clear. "Don't open the door for anyone you don't know. Call me first." We ignored the bell. The woman rang it again, more insistently this time. Then she knocked, her knuckles rapping sharply on the wood. "Mr. Johnson," she called out, her voice amplified by the quiet street. "My name is Brenda Wells. I'm a mobile notary. I have some urgent legal documents for you and your mother to sign. It's regarding the withdrawal of a complaint. I was told you were expecting me." The lie was so bold, so audacious, it almost took my breath away. They were trying to trick us into signing away our case. Alfred moved toward the door, his face clouded with anger, but I put a hand on his arm. "Let's stick to the plan," I whispered. Following the script Henderson had prepared us for, Alfred spoke through the closed door, his voice loud and clear. "We do not sign any documents without our attorney present. You can send them to the offices of Marcus Cole downtown, or we can meet you at the Fulton County Police Precinct." There was a moment of frustrated silence from the other side. The notary muttered something we couldn't hear. Then, from the shadows of the porch, a second figure emerged. It was Monique. She pushed the fake notary aside and stepped into the light of the porch lamp, directly in front of the camera. Her face was pale and tear-streaked, but her eyes burned with a desperate fire. She tried to use her last remaining weapon, Alfred's heart. "Alfred? Baby, please," she cried, her voice breaking dramatically. "Don't do this. Don't let her do this to us. Are you really going to let your mother destroy our happiness over a little misunderstanding?" I watched my son. This was his test, the final exam of this long, painful education. He stood tall, and when he spoke through the door, his voice was like steel. It was the voice of a man, not a boy. "There is no us anymore, Monique. It's over." The change in her was instantaneous and terrifying. The mask of the weeping victim dissolved into a gargoyle of pure rage. Her face twisted into an ugly snarl. "Over?" she screamed, her voice raw. "You don't get to say when it's over. I decide." And with a guttural roar of fury, she lunged at the door. She threw her entire body against it, rattling the frame. She kicked at the wood, hammered it with her fists, her screams echoing through the quiet suburban night. It was a shocking, violent display of her true self, stripped of all charm and calculation, and the little black eye of the security camera, mounted just above her head, captured every second of it. A minute later, a pair of headlights washed over the scene. Henderson's sedan pulled up silently behind her car. He got out not with the urgency of a cop responding to a crisis, but with the weary resignation of a man arriving at a destination he knew was inevitable. "Monique," he said, his voice cutting through her shrieks, "you're violating the terms of your release. You need to come with me." This time she was arrested for attempted coercion, witness tampering, and violating a bail bond. This time there would be no quick release. The last chord had been played, and it was a loud, ugly, and incriminating one. The day after Monique's final, desperate outburst, we were sitting in Marcus's office on the 25th floor of a skyscraper in downtown Atlanta. The windows looked out over the city, a sprawling map of our lives. On the polished mahogany table between us, however, the view was much uglier. Marcus had spread out a series of printouts, a forensic accounting of the last 6 months. It was the autopsy of a lie. I saw dozens of small transfers, $50 here, $100 there, sent from Alfred's account via Cash App and Zelle to names I didn't recognize. They were disguised with notes like power bill or car payment. I saw cash withdrawals from ATMs near the airport, listed as wedding expenses, long after the wedding was over. And then there was the most painful discovery: a plane ticket to Houston purchased with Alfred's credit card 2 months prior, for a Mr. J. Peters, the mysterious J from her text messages. He was real. She wasn't. Just taking money, Marcus explained, his voice gentle. She was bleeding him, a little bit every day, hoping he wouldn't notice the small cuts. The total is just over $25,000, not counting the wedding gift. Alfred stared at the papers, his face grim. It wasn't just the money. It was the sheer methodical nature of the betrayal. "The good news," Henderson said, leaning against the window, "is that she's made our case for us. The recorded extortion attempt with the marked bills is a slam dunk. The video of her attacking your front door will ensure she gets the maximum penalties. She won't be bothering you again for a long, long time." Weeks later, we were in a courtroom in the Fulton County Justice Center. It was less dramatic than on television. It was bureaucratic and slow. Monique stood before the judge, but she looked like a different person. Gone was the glamorous manipulator, the raging fury. The woman standing next to a weary-looking public defender was small, plain, and pathetic. She looked utterly and depressingly ordinary. The judge, a stern-faced woman who looked like she'd seen it all, didn't waste words. A temporary protective order, or TPO, was granted, legally barring Monique from coming within 500 feet of me or Alfred, our homes, or our places of work. A clear, legally binding schedule of restitution payments was established, a debt that would follow her for years. As she was led out, her eyes met mine for a fleeting second. There was no fire in them anymore, no hatred. There was just a hollow emptiness. She was a ghost now, a story we would tell one day. The book was finally closed. When we got back to Alfred's house that afternoon, the first thing he did was walk straight to the garage. He came back a moment later carrying the old patchwork quilt. It was a little dusty, but the colors were still vibrant. He unfolded it, and with a reverence I hadn't seen in him for months, he spread it over the back of the cold, gray sofa. Instantly, the room felt warmer. It felt like home again. That evening, we sat on his back porch, a place we hadn't used in months. The air was cool and crisp. We didn't talk much. We just sat in the comfortable silence of shared survival, sipping the sweet tea I'd made, watching the fireflies begin their nightly dance. After a while, Alfred went inside and came back with a sticky note and a pen. He wrote 4 words on it, then went back in and stuck it on the stainless steel refrigerator. I got up to look. It read, "Wisdom over weakness. Our new family rule." The weeks that followed were quiet. Life began to seep back into the empty spaces the storm had left behind. Alfred brought his Morehouse pennant out of the garage and hung it back on the wall above the fireplace, right where it belonged. He started smiling again, a real smile that reached his tired eyes. He started going out with his friends. Eventually, he even went on a few dates. He was more cautious now, wiser. He was healing. I moved back into my little apartment in Sweet Auburn. It no longer felt like a target. It was my fortress once more. The rainbows from the crystal hummingbird seemed brighter. I'd sit in my comfortable chair, surrounded by my books and my memories of James, and I would feel a deep, unshakable peace. I had gone to war for my son. I had faced down a predator who saw my family's love and hard work as nothing more than a bank account to be drained. But in the quiet moments of reflection, I realized I hadn't just saved Alfred's inheritance or his heart. In the process of helping my son find his footing again, I had rediscovered my own strength. The quiet librarian, the grieving widow, the aging mother, she had found her voice again, and it was stronger than she had ever imagined. I'm grateful you spent this time with me. If you've lived through something similar, or if my story spoke to you in any way, please share your feelings in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Your stories matter too. If you want more, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be gentle with yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.